Okay. Kajay Martashiv, Tamwich Bia Arish. We're back in business. We're a wee bit late there, Akarja. So you'll have to accept that for St. Patrick's Day. Lá Fhéile Phádraig holiday go there. August, we have a new guest. I'm delighted to say, joining myself and Karen tonight, a special St. Patrick's Day welcome to Mr. Aaron Joyce from Cundy Port Lariga, County Waterford. You're very welcome, Aaron, and Karen, you're welcome as well. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Not at all.
Yeah.
We're going to talk a wee bit about a roundup of the St. Patrick's Day celebrations, and we'll talk a wee bit about that thing with the woman who was tragically killed in England and what's happening there with the woke agenda, and a wee tiny bit about our old friend, the NI protocol. But basically, Aaron, we'll start off with you, my friend. What brought you in, if you don't mind me saying, asking, how did you get involved with this party, and what way do you see us moving, and what's your big hopes for the future in Ireland and on this St. Patrick's Day?
Well, on this St. Patrick's Day, I suppose I'm delighted to join you, and I'm very appreciative of the opportunity, and it's great that we've connected. You know, it's very difficult for us as a party, I suppose, to meet, and especially where we're all based, and the broad areas of the county of Cork's, Kerry, etc., and yourself up in the north, more northern side. To meet in person, I think, is crucial for us as a party, and we've done an amazing job to even connect on Zooms and network the way we have done so on social medias, which is where myself and Karen and yourself, Cathal, would have to do the most of our business, our communication, our talking, even as a party and personally at present, you know, and that's very difficult for a party like us at present, I think, and especially the fact that we are, I suppose, a small but heavily growing party. I suppose, to get to the nitty-gritty of your questions, St. Patrick's Day today, firstly, I want to congratulate every brave person that did take the stand today in Dublin, in the city, in particular the people that went to Herbert Park, you know, and I find it a little bit upsetting to see maybe the stance that the government themselves are taking on protesters, and indeed maybe how they present the policing plans to the public in maybe a way of fear prior to these protests. I'm very disappointed to see this. It's something maybe we'll talk on a little bit more about today. I know you want to cover it, regarding St. Patrick's Day, Cathal. But it's very important we mention it from the get-go. There was a lot of very brave people that did take on the journey to our capital today, and for a very, very good reason. And indeed, we do have our peaceful right of assembly, which we have to stand up for. And, you know, those people on a Lá Fhéile Phádraig, Mila Mahagutsa, and, you know, it's absolutely amazing to see the citizens of Ireland do that. But you asked me a question regarding the party. It was the only party for me that I could actually connect my heart and soul to their politics, to their policies, and to the way that they are progressively moving forward. That, in a nutshell, is why I'm seated here before you as a representative for the Irish Freedom Party. I'm very, very passionate that I believe we should be ending this lockdown as a matter of urgency. I'm certainly passionate about how the Irish Freedom Party are progressing their public stance and on social media and networking with other mainstream media outlets that will work with us. You know, maybe that's another topic for another conversation. But, you know, I'm very passionate to see the individuals like yourself, Cathal, and Karen, who come on streams here, who engage with people, who are trying to get support for the party, for programs like this that are going out there. The alternative, I suppose, voice that is needed in the Republic of Ireland today is not there. The opposition parties in government, without naming any one of them, there's plenty of them there, are supposed to be there. The opposition parties in government, I don't feel as though in 2021 on St. Patrick's Day in the Republic of Ireland, we do not have an opposition voice in government. We don't have an alternative voice in government.
I agree with you, yeah.
You know, and I feel as though that the Irish Freedom Party's policies, I feel as though their issues and what matter at heart to our Corla and many members in the party are very similar to my own mindset, outlook and approaches, and what I'd like to see changed in the Republic of Ireland. There's no doubt about that, Cathal.
I mean, I agree with you there, Aaron. I mean, I was watching a programme, I think it was the Sunday Politics show, and there was the three, there was Sinn Féin, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael. Sinn Féin are supposed to be in opposition. I'm not going to have a go at them specifically, but they are not in opposition at all because they sing from absolutely the same hymn sheet as the other two main parties. So as you're right, we do not have an opposition. in many ways, people in the Irish freedom movement are the opposition. It's just we don't have any representation at the minute.
Yes.
So we have a country where there is just no opposition voice. Karen, would you like to come in on that point, or anything from what Aaron's saying about St. Patrick's Day today?
Well, today was a great success. I actually made the effort to go up to Howard Park. I come up the night before
because Dublin,
yeah, it was brilliant. Apart from the weather, it turned out really well. I know people were stopped, coming in trains and buses and that, and they were stopped at checkpoints. But we did. I did come up, the night before, and it was worth the effort because I could get in early enough, and we thought the park would be closed, but it wasn't closed at all. And there's loads of people there already with families, kids, teenagers. Some were playing football, and it was like a normal time. You kind of forgot about the lockdown. You forgot that was all going on for the last year. You forgot all the problems, and the sun was shining. And then we had a few. Some of the people who were helping organise it and getting the sound equipment and that, they had some trouble with the Gardaí and had to argue the case. So they done it very well. They done it very peacefully, and the Gardaí ended up having to go to give up in the end because people weren't moving. They weren't going to go anywhere, and they weren't going to come in heavy when there's so many children around. And it really was a family day out. That's what it was for. Forget about the knockdowns. Fight back at the same time and do it in a very peaceful, non-violent way. And it was a great success, regardless of, there was some talk about arrests somewhere, in the city. I know I'm very conscious of what happened in RTE. People were blocked everywhere, going up and down to RTE and then inside in town. I'm not sure what happened with the Rosary procession. I think that went off peacefully as well. But there's great speakers. Our own leader, Dolores Cathal, along with a lady called Anne McCluskey from the north.
Yeah, I was talking to her actually. I was talking to her earlier actually. She was up in Belfast, but they were up very early in the morning, about 9 o'clock this morning. And then they went down. So, it was a very brief. I don't think there was much that happened in Belfast, but it was a very clandestine meeting suggested. But they went down to Dublin, obviously.
Yeah.
Greetings. Welcome in, Mick the Paddy. But just to go back to Karen, back to Aaron's point about, and we'll go back to the rally. What do you think about the fact that there's a lack of opposition in Ireland at the minute? Is he right?
Well, absolutely. We all know that Sinn Féin is not opposition. People for Profit, Solidarity and Rise, they're not opposition. Both of us, we came from the left, and they were for a while, some years ago, over different issues. But they kind of joined in with the rest of them once they got into the dole. And I just think there's no one actually standing up for the people in Ireland. There's nowhere to go besides us. I'm not just saying because we're in the party, but there's nowhere else to go, and there's nowhere, and it's kind of like anyone who thinks like us, even when they're not in the party, are actually, branded racist or they're branded far right, even when they're in like Gran Torino, Yellow Vest, and so on. We're all in that group, and we're all pushed into that group. And there's no way to kind of, and when people even say they kind of like what we do, because I actually had a conversation with a young lady yesterday in Drogheda, and she was given grief by her own friends when she was sharing our work, and that's the kind of thing you're up against. And well, where else do people go when there's nothing, or no other alternative? And they might agree with some of our policies, not everything, but they like what we're doing at the moment, and that's very important. But what do you do?
Yeah. Yes, Aaron, what's your take on how are things in Waterford? Is there? I know you're working very hard down there, and fair play to you. Well done. You're getting things really moving down there. From what we're hearing very good reports about it. Is there a good turnout, and is there a good vibe down there at the minute?
An absolute brilliant vibe in Waterford. I want to be very clear and straight, and especially with the viewers and of course ourselves. We're working very hard in all our constituencies, not just myself, I'd happily say, but I definitely appreciate the kind words from Cathal there. We're definitely a very active common, and we've been around there since around Christmas time. It is a struggle. It is a struggle to get people. There's a lot of businessmen that are very encouraged by our politics. They're very encouraged by our policies and the issues in which we are raising. But the problems being caused by mainstream media, governmental figures locally, media figures locally, we have to talk about this, guys, and I'm sure you're well aware, they cause a lot of problems. And they certainly do try and maybe stamp on or bring up absolutely everything they can in a negative fashion, or to present something in a negative fashion when it couldn't be further from the case. Some people are discouraged then with the fact that, like, maybe this branding of, as we've already discussed, so-called far right or racism or fascism, this makes me laugh. This actually, it's getting to the stage now where it doesn't even anger me personally anymore if I'm labelled or called that. I laugh at it, because if anyone who knows me personally, I have 2 children with a beautiful Belarusian woman. I have many, many friends from all over the world. I have been an immigrant myself and has spent time in about 4 different countries. This is nonsense. This is farcical behaviour, where people in opposition sides to ourselves, and people who believe that we are, in a sense, maybe, let's face it, just maybe a threat to them, or we are doing something that they are not doing, well, then they can maybe brand us in some way. But I'm happy to say, Cathal, there's a lot of people in County Waterford who are starting to see that our action and our words are consistent. And basically, we are doing what we're saying we're doing. We are building programs and speaking about the issues that are within our policies. And this is all that we can do. Remain consistent, be there, care, communicate, be honest, be open. And that's me in a nutshell that I want to be. That's what I want to portray. And I think that's what all of our candidates and all of our leaders in the Ardcarla, I think if we present this, if we be who we are and stay true to who we are, I have no doubt about it that over the next 2 to 3 years, the Irish people are going to see through. I hope they see through exactly who some of the other parties are, and they see for real the people that are doing a lot of work with the Irish Freedom Party, a lot of work in the Irish Freedom Party, indeed on their behalf, on a minuscule budget, and absolutely trying to get every area and every constituency in Ireland aware of us as a party, our policies, and maybe what it is we can do in their environments. And it's just great to see. But just one thing on what we're speaking about, Cathal, the Waterford constituency would have been massively so, and look, with some great work by him as an individual, David Culnan, the individual himself has done quite a lot of work in his capacity as man that he is in County Waterford. And again, he puts in a great shift. He does a lot of work there. But the Sinn Féin party would have a great presence, or would have dare I say it, an overpowering presence within the Waterford County or Waterford constituency. But there are and certainly is room for people within the constituency and parties like ourselves to grow, for people that aren't spoken for. They have to be spoken for. And I boil it back down again, Cathal, to that alternative voice or that opposing voice. Unfortunately for me, as a voter, and now as someone who would have heavy ambitions to contest elections, I'm just not in a position, due to policy or their own issues and my own viewpoints and interactions with them, to be involved with them. The Irish Freedom Party were the only ones for me. And I do hope that in the constituency of Waterford, and as well as every other constituency on the island, that our truth, our honesty, our openness and our policies can spread. And I really do believe that will happen, Cathal. It takes a lot of work from people like yourself, Karen, myself. There's no doubt about it. It takes a lot of work. But when this is done, when it's clear to be seen, I do really, really, really hope, and I do really believe that by engaging with the electorate as such, as I've described, we will be able to gain maybe, let's not say a massive foothold in the next election. I'm realistic, but we will be certainly able to gain a massive, I suppose, boost in the support at the next election. And there's no doubt about it that I would anticipate the Irish Freedom Party will take some seats that will be lying available, not only hopefully in the Waterford constituency, but all over Ireland.
Yeah, I think so, Aaron. I mean, the evidence showed it would point in that direction. I mean, we're getting so many new members coming in from other parties who feel that they've been let down by other parties and say they will not vote for any of them again.
Absolutely.
When we just look at the numbers coming in, and the last election was called very quick, and we did as well as we could. But I would be very hopeful for the future as well. The only thing about, Karen's asked a question quite a lot about how do we get the message out there. I think going to the rallies and things like that is helpful, because the media are starting to wake up, and that they have had more people like the Gripped guy and
Ben Scallon.
Or not Ben Scallon, the other guy.
John McGurk.
McGurk was on last week, and Mike McNamara was on. Is it Michael McNamara?
Michael McNamara, correct.
Independent guy was on, and they were talking about challenging the measures around the lockdown and said that we have to live with it. And the guy, John McGirt, was talking about you can't label people that are going to a peaceful rally as far right. It's just not going to work anymore. So the media are reluctantly maybe wakening up and being told what's the truth, really. Karen, you want to say?
Well, I want to go back to what Aaron was saying about, Sinn Féin being strong in Waterford. It's strong in Drogheda, like Louth in general, and has been like that for quite some time. But the main thing I try and do is you have to build your party by getting the name of the party as well as Cahill's name out in Louth, and that's important because you're starting from the bottom up. Sinn Féin's already there; they don't have to do much work, whereas we do. We have to start from scratch. Absolutely. And getting the name out, and whether they like it or not, they can't say they haven't been told. And I'm finding that sometimes, they can't really complain if they don't start voting differently and thinking differently and open their eyes. This is the solution of voting differently and voting for a party that actually does what it says at the tin. Because I did get, a few people saying, we don't like what you're saying. And, people say, oh, I don't like you voting and coming into this area. And, you still have to take the risk. And you have to kind of say, well, do it anyway, even if it is, risky in a sense that they might not like your politics. Yeah. But it's very important that you get out and say in a state or a canvas on the main street in your town, people will come up and say, I think you're racist, or I think you're this. I don't like what you're saying about the.
You're going to get a bit of that, but you just have to laugh, as Aaron says. I mean, it's just a nonsense. Yeah, if that's all they can give, if that's the only argument that they have no. They've lost the argument. They have no argument. Calling people names is ridiculous.
Well said.
Yeah, but I will say, most of the time, you will get those comments. Most of the time, I find that me and Carl, we find a lot of positive as well. Most of people are interested. They're interested in what you're saying. Oh, I didn't know you were in Drogheda. I didn't know you were in Louth. I didn't know you were.
They're glad to see that there's somebody actually standing.
The election last year, they would have taken the chance.
Yeah.
But unless you tell them you're here, they can't vote for you. We have to see. People are saying, "Oh, there's no election. Why are you canvassing?" You have to say, "Well, we didn't have that time last year. This is now. We have the time now. So there's a snap election. Or at least we say the party has upped the ante on its profile, but it's on the ground, in the leaflets in the door, the canvassing outside the church, on the street. That's where you get the name out and the name of the candidate out. Have a really good leaflet as well. Really good leaflet.
I noticed today. Just to interrupt. They were talking here about the general trend with the figures on the numbers is going in a positive direction. But as somebody was saying on the news today that, oh, look, the numbers are back up again and this isn't good. I smell a rat in that this is going to be, I'm sorry, guys, we're going to have to go back into lockdown slightly. So the carrot is put in front of your nose and it's dangled and dangled and dangled. And they're just never going to release. That's a worrying trend. It's almost like, when are we going to finally say, look, vaccinations are rolling out. Not as good down south as they are in the north, it has to be said. But that has to be the way out of it. Whether these figures are going slightly up or not.
Yes.
You can't lock down forever.
No, that's true. No, I agree. Just to come in there very quickly, Carl, that's a very good statement. I love your analogy or metaphor there where you say they're dangling the carrot. They've done that since last March. We're lining up here for a few days, a few weeks to flatten the curve, and we're still sitting here on 17th of March 2021, and we're in a very severe level of lockdown. And I'm very, very worried for the mental health, of course, of our elderly. I'm very, very worried for the mental health of our teenagers, to be truthful. Of course, I'm worried about everyone's mental health, but I'm going to zone in on those two there for a minute. Like teenagers involved in schooling, it's a way of socializing. They're obviously involved in things like scouts, Irish dancing, soccer clubs, GA clubs, all of the above. We could go on for the night. All of these doors are closed. I looked at level 3 there. One of the best things I found about level 3, and I actually put it out on Facebook, and the party did as well, I believe, when they saw it, we saw me throwing it out there. The churches are closed under a level 3 lockdown, but the bookies aren't. So some of these things don't really line up for me, Cathal and Karen. Of course, some of these things are just not logical, I'm afraid. And I'd love to have a debate, or I'd love to communicate with somebody here who would be able to speak to me and tell me where does the logic lie with the decision makers when all of this is being done? It's absolutely farcical. I'm very, very worried about, as I say, the mental health side of things, and I just really, really, really would be worried about the elderly, because isolation. There's some of those people, especially with the mainstream media. You know, you've just tagged the post there from Mick the Paddy there on screen call, and like, he's absolutely spot on. The mainstream media aren't only just liars. They're for the use of a better word, they are terrorizing people in their homes.
Exactly. Yeah, it's truly shocking. I mean, it is terrorism. I mean, what they're doing is not spreading the virus; they're spreading terror. I look at loved ones and that, and it truly saddens me that you can't see your loved ones. It really is upsetting, and they are in a state of terror about it. And I think it's immoral to be doing that. You know, you're right. Yeah, it's terrorism. Karen's getting a few compliments flying in here. You know,
I can't read them. I'm too small.
Paul is and new decor too. I've said, yeah. No, but Aaron, you're correct. Yes, it is. It's a form of terrorism. It's and I thought that point about the numbers up. I thought, I hope this isn't going to be, you know, I'm smelling a rat here. It's going to have to be. Dolores was saying before Christmas that was the enough's enough stage. I think we're at the stage now we have to say, look, this is it. You know, let's turn this round. You know,
we're beyond pushing the envelope. I think all these promises about, you know, the vaccine is the issue. One, it's not, because it's not a vaccine. It's questionable. The other thing is, even if it was safe, they're still locking us down. And I think people need to open their eyes on that issue. Why would you, even if we are on top of the schedule, like the North or the UK, we're still being you know, told, oh no, we still need to lock down even when the vaccines are rolling out. And then with this obvious, you know, blood clot issue, you know, they want to tomorrow is the day they're going to say yes or no whether this is safe or not. It's still not safe. It's still not safe anyway. And people are saying now you might have to get, you know, the unions is another issue, and that's come up twice now in the last week. My own union, FORSA.
Massively so.
The other issue is if TUI, which is the Teachers Union of Ireland, putting a motion next month for teenagers to be vaccinated in order to get to school. And that is completely wrong. Now there's a new campaign now. Pro-mask means pro-worker. That's a campaign now. My union is picking up now. I only heard about it there last week. So the unions are going against us too. So you're not going to have much joy if you contest an issue at work, whether you're working in a hospital or whatever. So you have no real hope there either. So the unions are not great either. So what we're going to do, I don't know whether the party will take an issue on that or, you know, maybe tackle them on it. I don't know, but it's something we can't ignore. But anyway, Carl, what were you saying there?
No, I agree, Karen. Yes, the unions are important in this too, but they don't seem to be doing their job. I mean, we'll move on slightly. Just I wanted to just chat a wee bit about. Somebody put a comment there about a 13-year-old pulled from the canal. Wasn't mentioned. Suicide. Yes, tragic. But I mentioned at the start, we're talking about that thing about the young lady that was tragically killed in England and London, which was an absolute shocker. And violence against women is abhorrent, as is violence against men. But what I find is wrong is the approach that this movement is taking about this is it's kind of demonizing men. And if the feminist movement were really worried about women's rights, they would be tackling the fact that women are summarily executed in Muslim countries for not wearing a veil and things like that. Instead, they're bringing it over to these islands and saying it's all men's fault. And they were talking about something that was mentioned, you put it up, Karen, about some idiot in the House of Lords saying that there should be a curfew for men. And they're talking about introducing safety measures for women. What about introducing safety measures for men and women and everything?
Yeah.
You're a woman, Karen. What's your take on it? You put that thing up.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's Baroness Jones who come up with that.
It's like the Black Lives Matter thing. It's like the Black Lives Matter thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, pitting women against men in this culture is wrong. It's not the solution. And then you've got a problem then as well, where women who have, say, mace in their handbags are then criminalized because they have a weapon in their handbag just to defend themselves. So you're right in the way that you must give them men and women ways of defending themselves, give them tips on being streetwise, and but it must be safe as well to go out in your streets. So there's a two-prong effect. Police must actually tackle the problem of violence generally, both men against men and women, because men do hurt each other as well. It's not just against women. And most men do respect women. Most men, when they go out on dates, whatever, it's not like men hate women in a general sense. And we can't have this curfew against men at 6 o'clock.
Thanks for saying that.
Wrong. Huh?
Thanks for pointing that out. It shouldn't even be considered.
It shouldn't be considered. And on top of that,
it's absolutely ridiculous. Nigel Farage put a thing up there. I think he actually thought she was joking. It was a joke.
Yes. And then I think the First Minister of Wales said his question on it.
I was your man Drakeford. He said something about it as well. Yeah.
He said it wouldn't be the top of his list, but he wasn't rolling it out, which is even bigger worry as well.
Aaron, you made a very good point before we went on live there about this. What was the thing you were saying about the men and the women's safety and that?
Yeah, I just felt as though I remember us talking there just shortly before, and then I heard about this incident. I truthfully don't know the ins and outs of this incident. But when we were chatting, I just really, I feel as though nearly every organisation, movement, campaign, call it what you will, nearly at this point now, we're speaking here about the lady, of course, who got assaulted or had the issue now regarding men, and you're talking about like putting in a time frame or a curfew for men. This is pretty serious stuff. I would have been similar to yourself. If I came across that on social media, I would have taken that as sarcasm or as somebody trying to play a joke. Like if we are really talking that in 2021 that we are here discussing this as a political possibility, or this could be brought in as a policy or a rule or regulation or even a law, this is very, very concerning. I was saying, though, to go back to the point and the question you asked, like, what were we talking about? I just felt as though when we were talking around this issue that you mentioned them yourself there, the Black Lives Movement, and numerous others. Okay, I personally, I know you don't, Colin, and I don't either want to be continuously referencing them. But in Ireland, I suppose in the last maybe two years or so, certainly the last year, we would have seen that. You're looking at this Antifa kind of movement now as well that's growing. But it's nearly always ridicule is the form of opposition, I suppose. Their first strike in opposing someone or attacking someone of the other side, so to speak, is always ridicule. It's always to go to the far point, I suppose, as they do with us, Cathal, I suppose, to a degree. Yeah. We can be taken as a primary example. And I basically definitely think that this has to stop. And like us having a chat, we could be far right, we could be fascist. This is the immediate thought process of someone to say, oh, this is what I'm going to say, or I'm going to attack in this form, and I just saw a lot of maybe crossovers in the example as you were bringing us up to speed prior to us going live of the show format. And that stood out to me, that in the feminist group, the BLM movement, indeed, as I say, Antifa, it seems to be always to the extreme side, the far side of just attack and ridicule. Like debates have to be had, Carl. Like people coming on, even speaking with us here, this type of platform is amazing, or even for us to network and get out and talk to people. But like to have 3 or 4 different people come on around an evening at 8 o'clock, should they be respectful individuals and able to operate themselves accordingly? It's absolutely fascinating to get 3, 4, 5 different people on that have different opinions, that are able to engage, that are able to bring forth, I suppose, knowledge that the public aren't getting on mainstream media. And when we're able to have these discussions and able to talk about these topics that the people, let's face it, they don't get to know from anywhere else. Just because they don't get to know it from anywhere else or from the mainstream media doesn't mean that these things aren't going on or these things don't happen. In particular, we're all well aware of the mainstream media propaganda being put forward here in the Republic of Ireland. We're well aware of it. Michael McNamara called it out a couple of weeks ago when he referenced RTE to be performing witchcraft, or they're a cult and they're the right arm. They're the right arm. This is his address. This is his quote, not Aaron Joyce's. It's Michael McNamara's. And he labelled them as a cult with playing with witchcraft, and that they are the right arm of this government spreading their propaganda for the last year. It's his words. And I have to say, I agree with the man, because that's exactly what's going on.
I agree. I mean, just make this point as well. I mentioned this point before. I mean, women's rights, absolutely. I fundamentally, who wouldn't be against any women's rights? We're not. We're totally for women's rights, as we are for men's rights. But there was what about the young Irish girl that was allegedly brutally gang raped in the Canary Islands? Not a mention on mainstream media. So where's the worry about women's rights there? Why was that not mentioned? I would like to know.
So would I, Cathal. So would I, and I'm aware of that the same as you are. Like the party know about this, and even as us, as the Irish Freedom Party, Cathal, there's nothing stopping us maybe speaking out on behalf of this or voicing it on our pages. I'm aware that some of our leaders are aware of this, and this is terrible. This is an absolute tragedy, and it's an insult. It is an insult. It is an insult to that lady's family here in Ireland that her life has been lost in the way that it has been lost in another country, and the ambassador or spokesperson for another country, or indeed in our own country, haven't spoken on that issue. That irates me. It frustrates me. That is absolutely disgraceful.
Exactly.
And somebody somewhere needs to take a stand there, either within Ireland or indeed in the country where she lost her life. And someone needs to speak out, because that girl cannot be forgotten. And I'm actually glad you brought that up, Cathal, because that's something, of course, we're privy with over the last week. That is, don't get me started. That is something that would deeply upset me.
Yeah, I mean, that jumped out the page at me. I mean, I have a journalistic background, as I say, and the one thing you cover in a journalistic sphere is you bring a local angle. And a local angle to Ireland is a young Irish girl who was gang raped. Now, is that not contentious for this country to hear about, Karen? Any thoughts on that?
I mean, I haven't, like you say, we haven't seen anything about it on the mainstream media. And why is it not mentioned? Why do they choose not to mention such a serious crime?
There must be an agenda. There has to be an agenda. I mean, I've been in the Canaries, and there is a lot of kind of low-level criminality from certain people, and they try and get you to buy something, and they put something on your arm and say you have to buy that now. And are they just afraid to mention it? That's political. That's political journalism. That's propaganda. Sorry, Karen, go on ahead.
And I believe it was there were a high level of North African people in the area, and that's just the way it is over there. But not to be mentioned, and why it's not being brought up is disturbing. And yet we have, likes to say, the left wing parties gone out are saying they're not bringing up the issue of women wearing masks or burqas or whatever, and scarves over their faces. They're not dealing with the issues that really need to be dealt with, such as this rape. And the fact that they were out yesterday, pushing their agenda on, gender-based violence, which is all very well, but they won't deal with the issue of this young lady. They're not even bringing it up. So if it was so important, if gender-based violence is so important to them, like in all its forms, then why aren't they not bringing it up either?
But they said about attacked and murdered in England, and it's absolutely shocking. And I'm sure we all condemn it absolutely out of hand. But they did make the point that it's thankfully rare. So if it's rare, why there shouldn't be a hoo-ha about it? And the guy's facing immediate justice, as was the guy that was involved in the guy Floyd that was killed in America. And the media always said he was killed at the side of the road. He wasn't. He died in police custody. He didn't die at the side of the road like that. So that's incorrect reporting. And the media are making decisions on what they tell us, as if, you shouldn't hear about that. Well, we do have a right to know about that. And it was, I think, the Mirror, and somebody else did cover it, but RTE, the national broadcaster, should be covering that and let us make our minds up about it.
Yeah, that's what news is. You report locally and nationally on issues for public interest. That is what journalism is. You might have a specialty, people on economics, somebody on politics, somebody on sports, somebody on criminality, you know what I mean? That's their specialty, but everything should be covered. And otherwise people don't get to see what is being going on in their own country. They report on everything else, but they won't report what's going on in their own country. I did see RT there today, but I don't know what slant they took. I didn't see the news, unfortunately.
It was all sort of happy clappy. They covered the protests, but they all said it was relatively peaceful. But they are letting down, as Aaron says, they're letting down that young girl's family by not covering that in the media.
You're right there. That is angering. And let's face it. Let's go into it. We know why. We know why. It's the European Union. If we were in control of our own land, our own laws, and our own issues, I'm sure if we have good Irish journalists that are going to be more than capable of presenting or conducting a story on that girl's behalf. I think, honestly, I think it's a disgrace. And I think furthermore, it's a disgrace that someone inside their own country didn't come out and address it in the mainstream media in their own country anyway, and issue an apology, of course, indeed, to the family, and interact with the people of Ireland. We all know why, because it would be bad publicity for the country that happened in. That's why it's not gone forward there. And in the best interest of relations for the Republic of Ireland's government, we're going to shut down mainstream media stories on it in Ireland and indeed in the country of origin. I just think it's not good enough. And I just really feel as though that is an insult to that lady's family.
Yeah. I mean, somebody's made a comment there that it's ethnic replacement is going on in this country. I mean, I'm inclined to agree, you know. Every time you put on the thing, you see more diversity kind of stories and what have you. But just to touch, you mentioned the EU, Aaron. You know, this business where the EU is taking the UK to court over this ridiculous Northern Ireland protocol. The protocol has been extended by the Brits to try and stop food shortages getting into the north, which is a bloody good idea. And the EU is now, the EU are sulking about this and are taking them to court. I mean, it's ridiculous. And they were ready to put in a border vaccine block on vaccines coming from the south into the north. They're the vaccine nationalists. The EU are acting like the nationalists. The Brits have actually, I mean, we had the ignominy there of Micheál Martin actually asking Boris Johnson for help with this vaccine because they're so behind the thing there. You know, you couldn't make some of this up. But this is what's happening with this border. They're blinking taking the Brits to court now.
Yes. Like, for me, this worries me. This whole stance that the EU take on their position in other countries. The pressurizing, I suppose, stance they take. We won't even get started on it tonight, but we can go the whole way back to the Lisbon Treaty number 2. You know, in a democracy.
Which Ireland voted against.
In a democracy, we voted Lisbon Treaty 1. They got their answer. They didn't like the answer, so we go Lisbon Treaty number 2. This democracy is over at that point. You know, like you know. This brings it back down to the start. The demise, call it what you will, was long in place before that. But for me, for my uneducated young political eyes at the time, I thought this is an absolute farce. This is barbaric. That they're more or less saying you got the answer wrong the first time, do it again.
Exactly. And they did exactly the same with the Brits. They says, "You Irish, you're stupid, you're racist. Vote again." Until we tell you, you know, as you say, you don't have a referendum, and then give another one if you don't like the answer. They were given the answer, you know. And the same thing. And that one was told. We were told
Europe, Cathal, as we went into the conversation about them, have indeed, like Ireland, I suppose I can speak for Ireland, I suppose what we know about, you know, have gotten great benefits from being a member of the EU. That's the way I'll word it. We have gotten great benefits in part from being a member of the EU. However, one has to get to the point and get to the understanding that the EU receive a large amount of funding from Ireland every year and have done so since our membership began. So I like to go with a little metaphor that we are pumping money into a fund in the EU. There is no doubt about that. But then they are trickling money from this fund back to us. In a sense, in essence, we are being drip-fed back our own money. Exactly. That is the way I am looking at it. Some people may say I'm naive, I am not looking at it correctly. I have looked at everything. That is what's going on. You know, people say they built our roads here. They didn't build our roads. Irish people built the roads. We got funding to do so, and it was Irish money that heavily contributed to that, long and hard Irish labour. I do understand their input and funding for farming and building networks. We could be here for the night and engaging in trade, tariffs, taxes and charges. We could go in to talk about this and broaden it maybe on another show. But for the point and the principle that I'm trying to say, if Ireland were in control of all of that I just said, somebody has to get with me now and get on the wavelength here, that we will be in a much better place when we are in control of this. And I really feel that we are not in control of our trade agreements, because we're not. We are not in control of our finances, and we are not in control of the laws in this country. And until we are in big trouble.
Yeah,
And
we
you
have to
mentioned
ask, we have to ask the EU for permission for things.
Sorry,
We have to ask the EU how to get the vaccine thing, and that's not work. We have to. I mean, even Peadar Tobin or the Vintu raised the point. We have to stop this cap doffing attitude to the EU. And Micheál Martin shot him down and said, "Oh no, I take issue with that." Well, he would say that because he's Mr. Backward notion of sovereignty, isn't he?
Mm-hmm. No, I get it completely. But just on the point there, you mentioned the English, the Scottish, the Welsh, and the Northern Irish, and collectively is the UK taking on this thing with Europe here. Look, I was in Scotland. I was in Glasgow for over a year. In and around maybe a year or so before the lockdown, right? And like the majority of the Scottish people wanted independence but wanted to remain in the EU. That seemed to be what was going on over there at the time when I was in Glasgow. For me, I came back down to the north and I started to see similar things, but I really started to believe that the Northern Irish people have to be given the respect of their own democratic right to vote and put across their own opinions. But I do feel as though at this moment in time that just like myself personally, I do feel as though that no matter what, from London or from Brussels, we are controlled and may possibly, but please God, we won't. And I hope there's enough people out there to oppose that. But we have effectively and may have effectively a British or European border in and on the Republic of Ireland. I just can't feel that can or will take place moving forward, Cathal. I just feel as though like united together, combating our own problems as an island. I personally believe the borders should be around the island. That's just me. No borders in the middle of the sea.
I agree. I said the point. One of the guys in the north. It's generally the unionists in the north that speak more sense than the so-called nationalists. He mentioned that we should have a border on the Celtic Sea, and both the two main islands can have the trade between themselves and free trade with the EU and free trade with each other. That's the solution to it. But they won't wear that, so they have to stuff a border down the Irish Sea, which puts trade blockage between NI and GB, which is going to cripple the economy in the north and also harm the economy down south. But they don't care about that down south as long as they remain in the EU. Yes. And so they've actually got a situation now where you have two borders. You've got the NI-GB border and you've got the Northern Ireland North-South border, which they were willing to implement. Micheál Martin was implementing that border the minute he was talking about not doing it. The guards are implementing the border. I can't even go down south at the minute because I'll get bloody fined. And that's a pretty hard border, as well as your vaccine border. So we've got more borders now than ever. Karen?
Have to be down here.
What do you say, Karen? I can't go down, so I haven't been down in a long time. You know.
Well, it's January, but still, and I haven't updated.
It's pretty hard border. Yeah. You know.
But I'm seeing people down from the north. I don't know how they're getting down. They must be getting down some way. There are people down the north from the north today.
Right. Well, they're taking a chance for it.
Yeah. But I mean, it's not fair. I mean, we've been told we don't want a border on the island, but yet they do have one through the police. Now, in relation to the police, I mean, apart from people making a few arrests today, I think the Gardaí they need to start talking to each other. They need to start organising. They need to push back on their representative bodies, the AGSI and GOA, and saying this is not why we became police. Because they're going to lose. They're already losing the trust. And I'm not anti-Garda. Yeah. They're losing trust, and the people are no longer going to cooperate with anything they do, even if it's a normal crime, because they're taking their time away from the normal criminal activity that you have that's still going on in this country. And that's where they need to put their focus and energy and efforts and skill to. And I'm tired of seeing people simply stop going places. Two of our friends today were stopped because they were sitting on a bench with a speaker. I'm sorry, that's nothing to do with anybody. You cannot stop people from moving around. And there's plenty of people in the park today, and Stephen's Green, and along the canal, so I was going home, in the sunshine, and not one guard is around them. But there is a targeted effort, but they need to turn around and just be police in a proper fashion. And they need to start organising and say, because the only way the government are doing what they're doing because they have the police where they are. If the police turn around and say no, then they can't carry out these threats. And how long are we going to I mean, enough is enough. We said that how many months ago? We said it before Christmas.
Mhm.
We said that a month ago. Enough is enough. Is no longer good enough. We have to,
Mhm.
you know, what happened today is brilliant. We need to keep doing it. And there's supposed to be another big day on Saturday. I don't know who's organising it, but we need to push back and say, you know, we're not doing it anymore. We're not.
Mhm.
I was actually asked a strange question today. I was getting a coffee, and a guy in his 40s asked me, "Are you getting much resistance from not wearing a mask?" And I said, no. I said, you'd be surprised how many people
Mhm.
don't ask, or many shops actually do respect it. And people's fear makes them wear it.
It's social
Mhm.
conditioning, you know. You get so many dirty looks. You end up just for a quiet life, just sort of putting something up around your head, you know.
I don't care about dirty looks. I just, you know what I mean. I
Well,
just
they
don't.
end up turning up. I was down the centre of town today, and there was so much police about. You almost thought just to get out to go somewhere and sit down on the park bench was making you feel uncomfortable, you know.
Mhm.
That's not life. That's not life.
That's not life.
No, it's not.
That's not living. I mean, look at the day today. It should have been a glorious day for procession through any city and town in Ireland,
Mhm.
north and south of the border. It should have been
East
a
and west.
brilliant day. The weather was fabulous. The atmosphere, I mean, despite everything, it still went ahead, and I think it's brilliant that it did go ahead. But the police themselves really need to have a really good look at what they're doing.
Yeah.
I've seen some footage. You're thinking, why do you think this is okay? How do they feel uncomfortable, and do they feel comfortable and right and think what they're doing? The law, I think that despite what people say about the Constitution, is still being undermined. The
Mhm.
police are not listening to that, and that's the problem. And there's going to be an awful lot of cases now where the police are going to be in landing an awful lot of trouble. But the only thing is, not everyone's going to bring the police to court. And that's another thing as well. Not everyone has the money, the time, the gumption, the bravery to do it, you know. So I don't know what the answer is pushing rallies, local. I think
rallies, awareness rallies, getting word out does have an effect. I mean, you do see the media do slightly change their tune a bit the more there is this. So I think we need to keep that up. Aaron, thinking about maybe. Listen, it was a great stream, and Aaron, you're very welcome. A great addition to the party here. That's what we want. We want speaking very well there. Do you want to finish off any final thoughts, Sakara? Or
yeah, you know what? I just come in very briefly there. I'm not in disagreement at all to anything that Karen said. You know, for obviously a very large proportion of An Garda Síochána. But I have engaged with the Gardaí here in County Waterford and County Cork over the last maybe 6 weeks. And I'm very proud to say that I was one of the attendees at a recent protest in Cork City. And, you know, I have to say credit where credit is due. And I do believe that the Gardaí in Cork City on that given day, in particular, how would I say, liaised or worked with the organisers or those of who had come forward as the organisers or those who were setting up on the day for what was a very good example of how a peaceful assembly and coordinated meeting of people should take place. And I have to be honest, the morale in certain areas of the Gardaí, we all are aware, not all. The moral, though, in certain areas of the Gardaí is very, very low. The good guys, the guys that are in there trying to do the jobs, trying to combat the crime that Karen spoke about, that is going on behind the scenes. There are guys in the Gardaí who do not want to be standing at a checkpoint speaking to you and asking you your business. They would rather be out there trying to get the criminal. That's why they joined. And I have no doubt about it that many will be disheartened. A good friend of mine actually came up to me after the rally, and he stated to me that he said if he was a guard at that rally, he would have handed his cap and his jacket to his colleagues and told them bring it back to the barracks. He was done. Because the way the people interacted with the Gardaí and the way the Gardaí interacted, and in mainly, and I will say it would have been probably mainly Anglesey Garda Station in County Cork. And I'm going to definitely say not an easy job for them that day, but a job very well done. And they gave the Irish people, the rebel county of Cork, a very good opportunity to protest and put their minds and their visions out there. And for that, that's great. But by no means, Karen, would I say that for every individual in there. I knew well you weren't saying what you were saying towards every individual in there, and I agree with every word you said. But just, I suppose, on one last point, there are some members of the Gardaí who will give up their job after all of this. There's no doubt about it. Good guys at heart. And there are a lot of members of the Gardaí there who you can rest assured do not want to be standing at checkpoints, and who do not want to be used as another arm of the government, and who do not want to be wasting their time as a Garda investigating you, your family and your children as to where they're going, while some crook in a car has just gone out a back road with God only knows what as a shipment. And this is what has to be addressed. But Cathal, I'm delighted to have joined you. I'm really looking forward to connecting with you a lot more personally and, of course, professionally. And Karen, it's been great to get to know you over the last few weeks, and I look forward to the weeks ahead. Gora míle maith agat, Ihawa.
So, Fáilte Rove, Kinche, Aaron, it's been a pleasure having you as Jack, and we hope we'll have you again as a regular contributor. It's been brilliant.
Absolutely.
I would just echo the point there about the Garda. I am not personally, I have absolutely respect for the Guards, and I think the party would have as a whole. And they were very much in tune with us at the time in the November rally that we were down.
Yeah, exactly.
With them. We don't antagonise the Guards and vice versa. It's a respect relationship. I think they're put in an awful position over these rules. They're damned if they do and damned if they don't. Same as in the north. Karen, just a final. Do you want to just give a wee final word before we sign off?
Well, I totally agree. I totally agree with what you're saying. I mean, it's not. It's just that they need to kind of take a stand themselves and their representative bodies and to push back on them. But I agree with you. We have a very good relationship with the Guardian. That was proven in November of last year.
Yes.
And yes, what happened in Cork was much about what happened in Dublin. They did stand back and let people get on with it. It wasn't as fractious. And in the end, today, they had to give up because people were just coming in. They were trying to stop people, but in the end, it still went ahead. So it wasn't as bad as it could have been. So no violence, no major events. So it's encouraging the Gardaí to take a stand for themselves. We don't want people to be leaving the Guards.
Of course.
But they must actually stand back, push back on their own representative bodies.
On the last rally that in Dublin, the guy with the firework, that's completely contemptible, and we condemn that out of hand. An idiot that does that does nothing. We have nothing to do with that. We condemn that out of hand. We made that there before, we do again. Listen, I encourage you, stream ínteach a bhí on, gur míle mai agam, and feici me who arished, feici me sib arished, a encourage you, slán go fáil, and we'll see you again.
Nice to meet you, Aaron.
You too, Karen. Slán go fáil, gur míle agat, Ihawa.
Thanks for our guys. Thanks for our
Slán.
slán fáil.